The story is told of a very wealthy man who had never been known for generosity. The church was having a fundraising drive, and they decided to pay him a visit. When the building committee met with the man one afternoon, they said, in view of his considerable resources, they were sure that he would like to make a substantial contribution to the building fund. "I see," he said. "So you have it all figured out, have you? In the course of your investigation, did you discover that I have a widowed mother who has no other means of support but me?" "No," they responded. They did not know that. "Did you know that I have a sister who was left by a drunken husband with 5 children and no means to provide for them?" "No," they said. They did not know that either. "Well, sirs, did you know also that I have a brother who is crippled due to an automobile accident and can never work another day in his life to support his wife and family?" And embarrassingly, they responded, "No, sir." They did not know that either. "Well," he thundered triumphantly, "I've never given to any of them, so why should I give anything to you?" Now contrast that story with this story of a poor old widow who gives away everything she has. Of course, even together, her 2 coins were worth virtually nothing. They were called leptons. And Mark himself notes in the story that their value is minuscule. The word lepton literally means a tiny thing. According to different dictionaries, it would take several of them to make 1 cent. It was the smallest, least valuable coin available. But as tiny as this pittance was, because of what she does with them, it's important to note that the woman did have 2 of them. She doesn't give 1 coin and keep the other for herself. She gives both. Sure, they weren't worth much, but 1 coin would have been something to hold on to. It was everything she had, all she had to live on, but she gives both of the coins. And Jesus noticed that. He'd been sitting there at the treasury, taking in the whole scene. And all money at that time came in coins. So it makes a terrible noise as it rolls down this long horn-shaped object and falls down into the pool of coins. And here comes this little old lady, and she has 2 small coins worth nothing and drops them in. They barely make a noise at all. You can imagine the temple leaders as they roll their eyes and hope for better luck with the next person. Everybody there that day, all sorts of people, looked down on that little old woman. There were the pompous ones, like the scribes, prancing around like peacocks, trying to be seen and making a show of just how much they were giving. They wanted to impress people. And then there were the rich people who more quietly put in larger amounts. Quietly, of course, being a relative term. And there was a lot of regular folks there too. There were the moderately well-off who put in a decent amount, and the struggling folks who sneaked in their pennies. But Jesus calls his disciples over and says, "This poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others." What set her apart from all the others, all who had gone before her, was not how much she gave, but how she gave. All the others had limited their giving. They kept some of their money for themselves. They gave out of their abundance. Abundance implies having more than one needs. Their giving came from what they didn't need, from their excess. They may have given larger amounts, but it didn't cost them anything. You may remember this. Several years ago, Ted Turner said that his gift of $1 billion to the United Nations didn't cost him anything. It was just excess money that some of his investments had earned over just the last 9 months. This widow was the only one who gave all she had to offer. Those 2 almost worthless coins represented her last shred of security, her last thread of hope for the future. And Jesus noticed that. Jesus pointed her out because he saw something in her heart, something he didn't see in the other people at the treasury that day. The crowd put money in the treasury because they felt like they had to. This was money that kept the temple running. It was their obligation, their duty. It's kind of like the church today. Most churches are just paying the bills, keeping the doors open, trying to survive. But Jesus points out this poor widow because she has a different reason for giving. She believed. She believed that God could and would do something with those 2 tiny coins, something important, more important than her own security. She trusted God enough to know that even without any money, God would take care of her. This woman had a vision. She understood that God's purposes, God's will, was bigger than her. There's a bigger picture. I think that's something that farmers understand. You see, when you plant and when you harvest, you're part of something bigger than yourselves. It's something you veterans understand. When you fought for your country, for freedom, you were part of something bigger than yourselves. There's a story about the making of parachutes during the Second World War. These parachutes were packed by hand in a tedious, painstaking, repetitive, boring process. The workers crouched over sewing machines and stitched for 8 hours a day. The endless line of fabric was the same color. Then they folded, packed, and stacked the parachutes. All that was left was for someone to pull the ripcord. How did they stand it? They stood it because every morning before they began their work, they gathered as a group. And one of the managers reminded them that each parachute would save somebody's life. Then they were asked to think. As they sewed and packed, how would they feel if that parachute was strapped to the back of their son, or their father, or brother? These laborers worked sacrificially, unerringly, and uncomplainingly because someone connected what they were doing to a larger picture, to a larger mission that involved the saving of lives. And that's what the church is about too. It's not about this building. It's about a larger mission of saving lives. Consider Mother Teresa. In 1929, she went to India as a nun. She taught there for years and became a headmistress of a school. And then in 1946, she received her call within a call to work with the poorest of the poor. And she received permission to train as a nurse to carry out her calling. She prayed, "Oh God, if I cannot help these people in their poverty and their suffering, let me at least die with them, close to them, so that I can show them your love." Was it wasted time and energy? Well, from that simple beginning, the Missionaries of Charity has grown to include 4,000 sisters and brothers, 755 homes, and 1,369 medical clinics that serve 120,000 people worldwide. But you're no Mother Teresa, you say. Consider William and Kathleen McGee, founders of Operation Smile. One is a plastic surgeon and the other a social service worker. Operation Smile began in 1982, and as of 1997, it had performed surgery on 18,000 kids in 15 countries to correct disfigurements like cleft palates and burn scars without charge. William McGee says, "The world is changed by emotion." Consider Mrs. Epps. She enjoys her time as a volunteer at Norgie Elementary, Virginia. There she works with students who have mental and physical disabilities. Her day begins long before she goes on duty at 7 a.m. She has to catch a bus to get to the school. And when she gets there, she greets Drew, who has difficulty walking. Another one of her favorites has Down syndrome. On a typical day, she turns on the tape recorder and plays Jingle Bell Rock while her students clap and sing enthusiastically. It takes a lot of energy to walk to work all morning, 5 days a week with these children. Oh, did I mention that Mrs. Epps is 99 years old? Is it wasted time? She says, "I don't want to act dead while I'm still alive." Mother Teresa, the McGees, Mrs. Epps are veterans. They all understand that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. And the church, including this church, has a mission that is bigger than us. We give because of that mission, that vision of what God can do with our offerings. Giving of yourself is never a waste. As the old prayer says, we give ourselves, our time, and our possessions because they are signs of God's gracious love. The poor widow who gave all she had understood that. And so did Jesus. Jesus noticed that woman because he himself would later sacrifice all he had, even his life, for us. God's self-sacrificing love is bigger than us. That's our vision for the world. We give of out of our love for Jesus Christ. He's our mission. And in him, we are part of something much greater than ourselves. Amen.